Hey everyone, welcome back to Ragtag Stacking. In today's video, I want to talk a little bit about stagflation, because I wasn't quite sure what it was, and I've heard the term a couple of times, but then I came across this article, and I thought it'd be a pretty good idea to talk about today. Yeah, I thought it'd be a good idea, because I always forget to show the sticker that I have, my channel sticker, so I thought I'd put it in the middle of the display here. But yeah, just getting into today's topic, I know that inflation is on the top of everyone's mind, and it's something that's talked about a lot on a lot of the different stacking channels and silver channels. Talk about inflation, and it's a big problem. Obviously, it's here, and the Fed keeps saying different things about, oh, it's transitory, this and that. But it's here, and it seems by all financial experts that it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere for a while. But then I came across this article that was going over the difference between what inflation is and what stagflation is. And it seems that we are in the perfect sort of mixture right now, that stagflation might be just around the corner and might already be here, and we're just in the midst of dealing with it right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump onto the computer and show you this article, because it goes into better detail about it. Okay, so this is the article here. It's on gobankingrates.com. It says the title here is the understanding the difference between inflation, deflation, and stagflation. I'm going to be focusing more on the stagflation here. Deflation's at the very end. I'll touch on it, but just going into here, it says July 4th saw big crowds, congested highways, and full airplanes as tens of millions of Americans celebrated not only the country's independence but their own liberation from what's been going on. There were worries that creeping inflation would have people home as the price of gas, meat, and just about everything has ticked up. But the pessimists would not be vindicated. Inflation, after all, isn't always bad, but it's far from the only economic phenomenon that involves change in the cost of stuff and the value of money. Economists used indicators like consumer price index to measure inflation, but for you, all the data you need is right in front of you at the grocery store, the gas pump, or the coffee shop. Over time, the cost of goods and services gradually rise as the purchasing power of your dollar falls. Common sense, and some inflation is natural and inevitable, but too much can be harmful, because when consumers can no longer afford to buy the things that they once could, the national standard of living declines and the economy declines right along with it. And then continuing, it says, but inflation can be beneficial because it adds to people's assets even though their debt remains fixed. Inflation can also be a sign of a booming economy. During periods of growth, businesses are making more and hiring new workers who then have more disposable income, which increases demand and sends prices up. When prices get too high, however, consumers cut back on purchasing, businesses lose money and lay off workers, and the economy begins to contract. So yes, obviously inflation can be good. A lot of the money that's been created from the inflation that we're seeing now is going into the stimulus checks, and we can see that a lot of the people that are using the stimulus checks are putting it, into AMC, and they're putting it into the Wall Street bets and stuff like that. If you were smart, you were putting some of it into silver and gold. And for some people, they didn't have the option or the luxury to do things like that because they needed it to pay rent or get the groceries for that month, or whatever it was. So we see here that this booming economy where inflation can be beneficial to people, it's not the times that we're living in. And going down here into getting into stagflation, it's a little bit closer to the world we're living in here. So it says, once considered a myth, the misery of stagflation is very real. So it says, when prices rise in response to growing demand from cash flush consumers in a booming economy, inflation can be good, like they just said up top. But when rapid inflation coincides with high unemployment and slowing growth, the result is economy killing stagflation. So yeah, that looks a little bit more like the times we're living in here, with coinciding with high unemployment. Obviously, there's been stuff going on the past, 15 months, 16 months now. Up in Canada, the stuff is just getting back to normal. We're we kind of just opened right around July 1st, where a lot of the restrictions are down. There's still border restrictions and stuff like that. In the States, it's been going on for a bit, and other states more than Some states more than others have been doing it for a longer time, and you can see that it's obviously not a booming economy. So yes, there's a lot of people unemployed. You know what happened, a lot of small businesses went under. They couldn't afford to not be open for those months on end when everything was in full effect, and a lot of people lost their businesses, lost their livelihood. They're not they're in pretty tough times. So it's not booming. There's a lot of unemployed, especially people that were self-employed that lost everything. They no longer have a job, and it doesn't look like there's going to be much growth coming in this sort of scenario where everyone's still kind of just getting back into normal society. So during that time, America was experiencing crushing double-digit inflation. So we have some pretty bad inflation now, but not because the economy was expanding. Quite the opposite. Soaring fuel costs sent the price of everything up, just as the economy was contracting and more people were out of work, which most of the era's economists simply didn't believe could happen at the same time. Well, it kind of coincided here, you know what I mean? The inflation with all of the new money that had to be created to cover a lot of the stimulus for people that were out of work seems a lot like this, where the economy was contracting and people were out of work. I didn't live through that time, but obviously it was a very bad time economically back then. And it seems like we're kind of in that that terrible mixture of the inflation going up, but obviously an economy that's far from booming. And it says U.S. economic and monetary policy changed forever when the world saw what happened when a stagnant economy suffers runaway inflation, stagflation. Back-to-back recessions, soaring prices, millions of people unemployed, and a general sense that the country was coming unglued. But it definitely seems like we have the right ingredients and everything there that stagflation is a real possibility. I'm hoping it's not the case. I'm hoping things change, and once everything starts getting back to normal. I mean, it's been great watching sporting events with the full crowds there and everything. It's starting to feel a bit normal. But yeah, the economy still has to get back on its feet, and if the inflation just still keeps going out and more people are still unemployed, getting those stimulus checks and stuff like that, or being incentivized not to go back to work, then the stagflation unfortunately might be the next thing around the corner. And quickly here, I just wanted to touch on deflation. It says falling prices are great until they're not. And obviously that makes sense, but then they have this thing here, it's called the deflationary spiral, and this seems to be the worst case scenario. So I'm just going to go through it quickly. It says when prices are falling, consumers delay purchases to wait for them to fall some more. And then it says when consumers stop buying things, production slows down and demand falls. When production slows and demand falls, prices drop, businesses lose money and lay off workers. As unemployment rolls grow, consumers have less money and even fewer purchases. And make even fewer purchases, and then the cycle repeats itself and the spiral continues until the downturn becomes a recession and a recession becomes a depression. So yeah, that was the article. I basically read through it all. I'm sorry, I don't like to do that, but this one, as I said, I didn't know too much about stagflation, so I wanted to read through the whole thing to get the gist of the article out, and didn't feel comfortable, kind of skimming through it or giving the gist of it. I just wanted to read through it all. But yeah, I will leave a link down in the description if you would like to read over it again. So yes, that was the article that I wanted to show you there, the difference between stagflation and inflation. And like I said, I didn't know too much about stagflation, so when I came across this article, I thought it was pretty interesting. And now it's, I know obviously that it's inflation paired with all of those things that they went through in the article there. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you think stagflation is something that is inevitable and is right around the corner, or if you have the opposite take and you think that, we're just going to have inflation to deal with, and you think that the economic upswing will keep us away from the stagflation that could come, but I don't have any insight on that. I don't know how quickly the recovery of the economy is going to be, and if it will be enough to keep it out of stagflation. But yes, like I said, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you come back for the next one. Thank you.